Approximately 1 child in every 100 is diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, or ASD. People with autism face challenges in 3 main areas: communication, social interaction, and behavior. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, or where you live, or whether you're rich or poor, autism doesn't discriminate, although boys are around 4 times more likely to be diagnosed than girls. It also affects millions of other people, like the friends and families of people with autism.
Ask the Messenger's TV show is a TV show that educates, informs, and entertains our viewers on public health issues such as mental illness, suicide, addiction, illness and disease, COVID-19 relief, crime, domestic violence, homelessness, human trafficking, employment opportunities, healthcare, and more. And now, ask the Messengers.
April is Autism Awareness Month. And today on Ask the Messengers, we hope to help you understand more and to share stories about what it's like to live with autism. Our guests today are mental and behavioral health consultant Tammy McCrory of the McCrory Center with locations in Detroit and Livonia, plus parents Claudreen Jackson, who is the widow of the late Pervis Jackson of the iconic singing group The Spinners, and Vicki Kirby are here to talk about what it's like to live and care for their autistic child. Ask the Messengers begins now. This is Tina Nelson for Ask the Messengers, and I am so excited to have Tammy McCrory, who is here today to tell us what is the autism spectrum disorder, what does it mean? When we say those words, you hear people say, oh, they're on the spectrum. Like, people are trying to sound super educated now. Oh, they're on the spectrum. And I'm like, okay, what does the spectrum mean? And then I noticed the logo deals with puzzle pieces. I have a lady at my church. She talks about her daughter who's autistic, and the highlight of her daughter's day is putting the puzzle together. So she has this puzzle moments. So can you explain, first of all, welcome to the show. Can you just let us know, what does that autism spectrum disorder, what is it, and how do people get it, or how are they diagnosed with it?
Well, thank you, Tina. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm honored to speak about autism spectrum disorder. So autism spectrum disorder is pretty much a neurodevelopmental condition, and it starts in the brain. No one knows exactly what causes it. So you have scientists all over the world doing research to try to narrow down if it's a specific gene, if it's the environment, if it's like whatever is causing the condition. But when you say neurodevelopmental, that means that it starts within the brain. In the most pragmatic terms, I often describe it to families like this. You know how like you and I learn how to perhaps walk or read or write or socialize with one another, and our brain perhaps was doing like this. I say autism is just doing like this. So it's a condition where they don't necessarily grasp all of the essential dynamics of a relationship or with communication and things like that. So they have to be taught those things. So they call it a spectrum because it's so broad. And initially they used to say the word, you know, like you said, Asperger's, whether it was Asperger's, autistic, Rett's condition, they had different variations. But over time, they recognized that if you combine all of those together, then it's just the spectrum. Because you have children who they have different variations of autism. So none of them looks the same. So you may have one kid where they may be very fluent in communication, then you may have a kid that's nonverbal, but they still may fall on the spectrum. In order to get a diagnosis, you have to meet the CDC's criteria with 5 out of 7 different domains. And so when you look at it, it's things to do with communication, whether it's verbal, nonverbal, because sometimes, again, you can have autism, you may be very fluent, but you may not understand necessarily the pragmatics of communication. So, you know, like you and I talking, I may not necessarily say something that's rude to you, right? Because it would be socially inappropriate, right? And children sometimes with autism, they don't quite understand it. Some of the other things we look for is like hyper or hyposensory behaviors. So you may have a kid that, maybe a certain texture may bother them, or they may only be attracted to that texture. For instance, I have families come in all the time who say that their kid will only eat mashed food. They won't eat any other textures of food, right? Sometimes you have children who have repetitive behaviors. The most famous one is when they stim or they do something like this with their hands, or they do the same thing over and over and over again. Some of the children may not speak at all, and they have self-injurious behaviors where they headbang, or they may pinch themselves or injure themselves. So again, that's why it's considered a spectrum, because you see a variation of different behaviors that make up this condition. Where did it come from? Again, it used to be 1 out of every 100,000 children. It went down to 1 out of 10,000, I think, in the 90s. Most recently, it's at the CDC. When I first started, it was 1 out of 68. Now, most recently, the CDC updated the numbers, is 1 out of every 36 children, meaning as every mom, 36 women that's pregnant, one of those children, the probability of them having a child with autism spectrum disorder is very great. So that's what we're looking at. I think last year or the year before, even the United States Army started putting money into research to try to identify what's causing the disorder. Because if you think about it, it's affecting the key things, our socialization, our communication. Those are essential to us, as being human beings, right? And so they're putting money into the research and what's exactly causing it. But like I said, all the research supports it may be an environmental component, it may be a condition that's passed along the way, but there's no clear-cut answer that can pinpoint exactly what's causing it.
So is this something that someone is born with, or does it happen over a progression of time?
Yeah, so they are definitely born with it. That's what it means by neurodevelopmental. So it's something that, again, a lot of the families, they'll say stuff like, oh, well, this started when he was 2 years old. They may just not have noticed the signs, but it's something that they definitely are born with. It's not something that you acquire later. It's something that starts in the brain. At the age of 2 is such a tender age, and that's the age where you have all these expectations of your kids. So you expect them to start approaching other kids to play. You expect them to start using phrase speech. You expect them to do all these wonderful things. We call it, terrible two, but we're looking forward to those terrible twos. And then you notice that your kid is not meeting those developmental milestones. And then that's when a lot of times the parents become alarmed or aware that something may be off, even though they may have heard it from a family member or friend prior. I think that a lot of times people sometimes be in denial, not really wanting to accept the fact that something may be wrong with their child developmentally. One of the common things we hear here, because we do a lot of the psychological diagnostic testing for autism in Wayne County, we often hear how the children have been denied access to the evaluations by their doctors. Their doctors often tell them things like, they'll grow out of it, just wait. Let's see what happens.
Now, before I let you go, one last thing. For families who think or are experiencing, or what are the resources, or how would where do they start?
So they have options depending on where they live throughout the whole entire state of Michigan. They have what they call community mental health organizations. So ours here locally in Wayne County is the Detroit Wayne Integrated Health Network. So they can call there, and they have an access center, and they'll give them a preliminary screening to determine if they have autism, if they have autism, but if they're meeting the criteria by different measures. So if the preliminary screening comes back high, they'll send them to perhaps like an organization like mine, where they'll give them the whole full comprehensive psychological evaluation. And the same thing in Oakland County, Washtenaw County, whatever county they are in, they have those services available. If a family has private insurance, they can call our agency directly. That's the community mental health is for people who have Medicaid. But if they have, like, let's say Blue Cross Blue Shield or a PPO, they can call our agency directly, and we can provide the services for them. We can get them connected or do the testing ourselves and link them to treatment.
For more information about the McCrory Center and how Tammy McCrory and her team can help you or someone you know dealing with autism, visit their website, www.mccrorycenter.com, or call them directly at 313-766-6285. When we return, Claudreen Jackson, the widow of the late Pervis Jackson of the iconic singing group The Spinners, shares her story about living with her autistic son PJ. And later, Vicki Kirby shares about how her daughter, Destiny, channels her energy through her puzzles. Ask the Messengers. We'll be right back.
I am Claudreen Jackson. I am the widow of Pervis Jackson, who was the bass singer of the Spinners, who were a #1 singing group during the 70s and 80s. And everything was wonderful because they had hit records. My husband had worked so hard to advance his career, and now the career was going great. And then in 1975, Pervis Jr. was born, which we were elated to have another child. But by 1976, we found out that he was diagnosed with autism, and it was after he'd had a vaccine shot. But I don't say do not vaccinate, because then we'd have a bigger problem. But Pervis Sr. was the foundation for the Pervis Jackson Foundation, because when we couldn't find help for our son from any agency, we decided then that we would do something to help. So the Pervis Jackson Foundation wasn't started for many years after that, but it was something that we both really wanted to do. So I've learned a lot from being the parent of a child with autism. I thought I was teaching him, but he has also taught me. He has taught me about unconditional love. He loves me whether my hair is combed, whether I've had a shower, whatever my clothes cost, what my bank account is. It's just pure, pure love. So I've learned about unconditional love from him. I've learned about living in the moment. He's not worried about yesterday. He's not worried about tomorrow. He lives in the moment, which was hard for me to learn how to live in the moment. And I also learned from my son that you could tune some things out, that everything is not worthy of all of your attention. So I have learned as much from him, and I have surprised myself in the growth that came about from this person that I thought was going to ruin me. When I was trying to cure PJ and help him to develop, I thought if anybody else ever cured their autistic son, I can. But PJ is on the lower end of the autism spectrum. The autism is a spectrum disorder. There are people on the high end of the spectrum and people on the lower end of the spectrum. And Pervis Jr. is on the lower end of the spectrum, so he was not able to learn how to speak because he has speech impediment, and he didn't want to speak anyhow. He was not able to learn how to read or write because he didn't see any reason for it. So it was hard for me to accept the fact that he was always going to be a special needs person, because I'm a retired teacher, and you know, us teachers, we're trying to get people to be able to live in the community without help, and he never will be able to. One of my fears about my son is he's so tall and moves fast, and if he's out in the community alone, which he's never in the community alone unless he walks out of the house, which he did. He walked out of the house one morning. I did not even know he had walked out. Someone called the police on him. She did not call the police to arrest him. She called the police to protect him because he was barefoot, and she was talking to him and he wouldn't talk. So she had called the police on him. In the meantime, Pervis Jr. knew that he was wrong, so he came back home, and she followed him back home and canceled her police call. But we've all seen some of the tragedies that have happened with people that don't respond to the police, especially intimidating looking Black men.
Get on your stomach! Step it up. Eustis Police released this body cam video so you can see their side of the story.
You had the perfect storm.
The mother of Louis Greha agreed to go on camera so she could tell her son's side of the story.
He don't know what y'all talking about, what y'all doing to him. Please get off him.
The story starts Saturday afternoon in a Eustis neighborhood. Police get a call, burglary in progress. The woman is scared, says a man she did not know approached her, then allegedly tried to break into her house.
I don't know if he was slamming it or but I heard the knob on the door shaking.
Eustis Police quickly find the man they're looking for. They yell multiple commands, and all they know is he's ignoring every one of them.
Get on your stomach, dude! Get on your stomach! I don't want to do it again!
What they don't know is that 20-year-old Louis Greha is a man diagnosed with severe autism, cannot speak. According to his family, he has the mental capacity of a 4-year-old. He's over 6 feet tall and wears diapers.
Had they known this was a severely autistic person, I doubt any force would have been used. I think they did everything right. It could have been a lot worse. Thank God it wasn't.
I don't know how people who don't have my children manage with a behaviorally disordered person such as my son was. My older children were always there, whether they felt like it or not, because they lived with me. So when I got to the point where I couldn't handle his behavior anymore, I would just leave him with one of the older children, and who were 17, 16, and 14 when he was born, and they were wonderful babysitters. So I greatly appreciate all the help they gave me. I wrote my book, Inspired by Autism, because I was such a pathetic mess when I first found out about my son's condition. But because of special education teachers helping me and learning from other parents, we have grown to the point where I'm able to help others. So if you're going through something, remember, you're going through it, and you'll get through it. And I'm a witness that if you try hard, and if you are accepting of your child's condition, because one of the problems was in the beginning, I was not accepting of his condition. So if you accept your child's condition and give them that motherly love, you'll continue to grow. We get stretched with these children, but that's how we grow.
Stay tuned for more of Ask the Messengers.
Hey everybody, in honor of Autism Month, I am going to talk about my child really quick. And her name is Destiny Kirby, and she's 25. She got diagnosed at 3 years old, and she is nonverbal. She communicates with a GoTalk device, which she uses sometimes. She also uses PECS, which is a picture communicated thing where she can point to things and say, I want this or I don't want that. My daughter happens to have a special gift, and her gift is puzzles, our puzzles. And she can do, I'm gonna say she's done a 1,500 piece puzzle maybe in 3 to 5 days. She hasn't done it lately. Right now she's doing 750 in 3 days, 800 in 3 days, 3.5 days. And so it's a sight to see. It really is. The girl, she can't talk, but she can whip out some puzzles like she's like a little computer or something. And so, in honor of Autism Month, to all the parents out there, love your child, become an advocate, find out what works for your family, for your child. Especially if there's other siblings around, make sure that they are informed and they are included, because we're not going to be here forever. We need somebody else to take over. It's not all doom and gloom. There's a lot of great memories, and just be there for it all. Be there, not as a super parent, but just as a parent.
It's overwhelming. It's like having a part-time job that you really don't want, but you have to have. Malia was 3.5 when she was diagnosed with autism. I had heard of it, but didn't really have a good idea of what it was. I know I was kind of numb, and there was so much information coming at me at once that I probably did not take in everything. We pretty much follow the same schedule every day. We don't socialize. We don't have people over as much as we probably would. We don't go to picnics or barbecues or things. We pretty much stay to ourselves. This is the type of disability that if you just look at Malia, you don't think anything's wrong with her. But then you might see her having a crisis where she's screaming or hitting or yelling, and then you think, well, what's wrong with her? I just feel like it's just a misconception because people don't understand. Parents that have kids on the spectrum, we are doing everything we can to make sure our kids succeed. We just want acceptance and understanding. And she's ornery on top of the autism, so I just feel like sometimes she just makes us laugh so hard, and I think people don't realize that kids on the spectrum have a sense of humor or a personality, and she really does. I would like to see her do something that makes her happy, do something that makes her enjoy life.
This is the story of a boy who didn't talk for a long time. The boy liked things to always be the same. Any changes would scare and upset him. The unknown was an unfriendly place. The boy was very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where they couldn't get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. He wasn't trying to be mean, it just made him feel uncomfortable. Sometimes he would flap his arms again and again.
One day I found out I have something called autism. My family got me help. Slowly, I found my voice and learned all the ways I could live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
Well, that concludes this week's episode of Ask the Messengers. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you would like to help support our show, please feel free to make a donation of any kind by visiting our show website, www.askthemessengers.org. If you prefer to mail donations, please make check or money order payable to Ask the Messengers TV show and send it to 18400 Schaefer Highway, Detroit, Michigan 48235. Ask the Messengers is the program that deals with things that help you. Thank you for watching.